The method is number 2. How we communicate God's truth matters. We must do God's ministry God's way. And Paul has spent the first 2 chapters of this letter banging this drum, hasn't he? Because the Corinthians wanted to do ministry their way, not God's way. Their way was appealing to the unbeliever. Their way was appealing to the flesh. Their way was appealing to their own ego and their own pride. In the Corinthian church, they got to the point where just teaching the gospel was boring. It was dull. They wanted to mix in some Greek wisdom. They wanted to give it some flair, some pizzazz. I mean, come on, Paul, spice it up a little bit. Just Jesus and the cross and forgiveness of sins and righteousness and sanctification. Paul, that's boring, Throw in something that'll really liven things up a little bit in the church. And they criticized Paul because of the nature of his ministry. But Paul didn't minister the way that he did. He didn't use the method he used because he was trying to win the Corinthians' approval or the approval of any other human being. Paul was seeking to be a faithful builder using quality materials, and Paul understood if he built his own way or he built the way the Corinthians wanted him to build, he would be building in vain. And that is why he determines to know nothing but Christ crucified. That's why he preaches the gospel without cleverness of speech so as not to void the cross of its power. Paul knows he's going to be evaluated in his ministry. But Paul also knows that the one doing the evaluating is not sitting in the Corinthian church, but sitting on the throne of heaven. And his great burden is not to have the Corinthians say, "Well done, good and faithful servant," but to have the Lord Jesus Christ say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And so Paul understands he must build God's church God's way. I like how one writer put it, those who rely on their own ingenuity and think they can of themselves bring some new thing into the church are actually building a structure that is out of proportion to and unworthy of the foundation. This is a building of wood, hay, and stubble. It is a building false, fragile, and perishable. The attacks of the enemy easily shatter it, and on the day of the Lord, that testing fire of God will demolish it. I think this is one reason why God allows faithful churches and faithful ministries to be tested and attacked by the devil and by the world, by false believers, by misguided believers, because God is allowing us to see a preview of what's going to happen on that final day. And will the ministry that we engage in survive his judgment fire? If our ministries can't survive temporal attacks from the devil or from men, what chance do they have to survive the holy fire of God's judgment? And so when God allows us to be tested and we survive and we come out even stronger on the other side, that is a great hope to those who are serving, to those who are building, that what they are constructing for the temple of God will last. This is the method, then, that we must use, the method that God has designed in his word, not methods that appeal to the flesh, but methods that conform to the Spirit. And our methods are either going to be those of gold, silver, and precious stones, or those of wood, hay, and straw.